Okay, じゃあ始めましょう。Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay. So, did you just draw a blank on the katakana for the n?
Yep, just, I didn't draw a blank, I'm so used to writing the N, I didn't like think about it.
Okay, so it should instead be
Yeah, the dash with the swoop, there it
this
is.
one. ハンバーガーを食べます。
You
Habima.
forgot
And
the.
I forgot the N too?
Yeah.
So that N needed to be over here.
Sure. I also use my book, so.
Okay, well, hey, if you can do that much without your book, that's good. Okay, so ハンバーガーを食べません. You don't eat hamburgers. Okay, that works.
5 seconds.
満月に寿司を食べます. Close, but instead of ni, because it's doing an action at the place, you're not traveling to the place. So what particle should it be?
De.
De, that's the
Yeah.
one. And your is looking suspiciously like a soul. I would bring that down a little bit to help it look more like an
Okay.
I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, man getsu is possible to do that way also.
Yeah, I did that first, and then I was
And
like,
then you
wait,
weren't
should
sure.
it be katakana?
Well, and that one is ambiguous because, one, restaurants can do whatever the heck they want with their proper noun names. So sometimes a restaurant will choose to publish its name in katakana because they want it to stand out. Also, like you said, Korean owned, so there you go. Or at least offers a lot of Korean food, we don't know for sure. Mangetsu
It's
is
a Korean barbecue place that also has a lot of Japanese food. And so I was like, they're primarily Korean, so I wasn't sure if it should be katakana or.
Right, but the term mangetsu means full moon in Japanese, and I'm assuming that's where they got the word from, because I don't know of anything it could mean in Korean offhand.
Where is
I
this
also
restaurant
found,
at?
it said full moon, and the other thing also said something like a lantern,
It's
Japanese
192?
lantern, demon lantern.
Oh.
Melbourne.
Okay,
It said full moon, and then it also said the other one.
yeah,
Oh,
well,
so
yeah.
you just like picked a restaurant.
I think
It's
it
like
might
even
be like the
restaurant,
name
it's
of a
trying
type
to
of
I'm
lantern
mad at
that
roast
imitates the light of the full moon,
Oh, okay.
because
I
mangetsu
don't know, that's
literally is full and moon.
Yeah.
Unless there's a different
Sure,
kanji
21.
pair that I don't know about.
Kaiser?
Interesting.
So at any rate, but yeah, it can be written in kanji. And generally, the sort of default setting, if you know that it can be written in kanji, but you haven't learned the kanji for it yet, the default setting sort of is to put it in hiragana usually. But like I said, if it's not just Japanese, or if it's, you know, being cutesy just because it's an advertising gimmick, sometimes it can be done in katakana. You know, you see that all the time in Japan where, you know, something will be written in katakana just because. Okay, これは音楽を聴きます. Someone listens to music, right? And this one, 私は帰ります. That works. I return home, right? And notice that because 帰ります assumes or implies returning home, you don't actually have to say うちに or うちへ帰ります. You can, but you don't have to. Okay? Any questions about how these kinds of sentences work? We're going to do more of them. So, are we ready?
Yeah, 24 people read it.
Yeah, apparently some people are boycotting our exercise. So we're going to move on because it's time to get started. So the question now is, you guys want to do the vocab run through real quick, or do you want us just go straight into some content?
I think we should go straight.
Straight to
into
content.
it? Okay, we've done the vocab a few times, so hopefully everybody's ready now. So let's look at, what is it, 95 page.
So we're gonna taste the vocab as we do the content, right?
はい。
We're gonna taste my vocab while we're doing the
は
content.
い、そうですね。じゃあ、95ページ、Part B. I believe that we already did subset A, and we were starting to do subset B. where we're adding an element. Okay, so what we had last time was direct object, full verb, right? And now what we're adding is place, de, direct object, or verb. Okay, so this pattern exactly. Okay, so you're going to put the place name, the particle de, then the direct object, or, and then the verb, which is the thing that is being done to that direct object. Hi.
Now, didn't you say that technically we can change it where instead of saying what was that place called?
Mangetsu.
Mangetsu, Mangetsu, and then sushi, I can say I eat sushi at Mangetsu, or at Mangetsu I eat sushi.
Yes, but when you
As
do
long as the I
that,
part is in the beginning.
well, yeah, watashi wa would be in the beginning.
Okay.
The other important thing to do is make sure that your
Carry the particle with it.
character, your particle, thank you, sticks with its noun. So your box,
So I could
those
say
two boxes can swap places.
Okay,
sushi
You
or
cannot
mangetsu.
separate mangetsu from de or sushi from o. If you swap the particles,
we're saying at sushi
Then-
I eat Mangetsu.
yeah, you're gonna
Gotcha.
eat the restaurant at sushi. That doesn't sound appetizing.
Tabemas has to stay at the end, the verb has to stay.
Yeah, tabimasu stays at the end. Verbs in Japanese, 99.999% of the time are at the end of the sentence.
So I could have said sushi o mangetsu de tabemas.
Hi.
Okay.
Yeah, and what that actually does when you swap them like that, when you change it up, it puts a little bit more emphasis on what you just moved closer to the verb. This is sort of the normal order. When you swap them, it changes your emphasis a little bit. This one is saying, like, basically, I'm going to eat sushi at Mangetsu. If you switch it around, sushi o mangetsu de tabimasu, it's like, I'm going to eat sushi at Mangetsu, not some other place that has poor quality sushi. You know, so it's putting more emphasis on mangetsu de by putting it closer to the verb. Basically, the rule of thumb in Japanese is since the verb is sort of the most vital part of the sentence, you don't know what's happening without your verb, right?
Right.
So whatever you put closest to the verb, especially if it's something that wouldn't normally be right next to it, whatever you put closest to it, you're kind of giving it extra importance, extra weight, extra emphasis in the sentence. So it's kind of a proximity thing. And since the direct object is the thing that would normally be sort of the point of the sentence, aside from the verb itself, that's kind of what normally shows up right next to the verb, right? If you deliberately choose to swap things around, you are giving extra weight to that other element that you just put closer to the verb.
Cool. That's neat.
Okay, so you can change your emphasis and give importance to something just by playing around with word order. Just be careful that your particle stays with what it should be with so that you don't end up accidentally saying that the sushi ate your grandmother, you know.
That's what sushi is. The amazing story.
Terrifying.
Yeah. So, you know, you don't want to say that you ate the restaurant or that, you know, the sushi ate you or any of that kind of stuff. So, you know, just be careful of your particles. Okay? Otherwise, you will get known as the gaijin with a sense of humor.
So good about the sushi.
Okay, so let's look at part B and see how they are giving you on the top where the number is, they're giving you the direct object, right? Like zashi. Underneath, they're giving you a place/time. For now, we're going to ignore the time. We're going to come back and do that later. Okay? So I just want you to do the place name, de, direct object, all. Okay? And we're going to stick with that order for now, just so people don't get too confused.
Cool.
So, Michael-san, you want to read the example for us with the word library added in.
図書館で雑誌を読みます。
はい、いいですね。じゃあ、堀さん1番。
So this would be,家で音楽を、聴きます。
はい、そうですね。じゃあ、千秋さん。
学校でテニスをします。
はい、ハンターさん。
How would you like us to say McDonald's? I found 3 different ways. Macado was one of them, or Macado, something like that.
Makudo is the common abbreviation these days. Makudo Narudo is the long form, but if you want to just use the abbreviation Makudo, that's fine.
Use the abbreviation.
Hi.
Macado de hamburger o tabemasu.
Yeah, because you're talking about Mary in this case, not yourself, so
Right.
it's okay.
Tabemasu.
じゃあ、4番。ラズさん。
Would be coffee shop.
喫茶店。
Kissaten?
はい。
So it's the same as cafe.
Yeah.
Cool.
Kissaten de kohi wo nomimasu.
はい、そうですね。喫茶店でコーヒーを飲みます。じゃあ、5番。千葉さん。
家でテレビを見ます。
はい、家でお家でテレビを見ます。はい、じゃあ、リンジーさん、6番。
I know where we are.
Page 95, number 6.
Well. Not that guy yet, whatever. Okay, 5, B6, okay. Alright.
So you're using college.
Well, that makes sense in Q, so for the first longer context. Okay, college every day, and they're saying.
So you're leaving out every day for now. We're just doing at college speaks Japanese.
That college speaks Japanese.
Right.
Okay. Don't know.
Okay.
Good. Haven't studied one. 2 weeks.
Okay, so you want some help? So
Yeah.
what's college?
Daigaku.
Okay, and then the particle is going to be the one that's on the board that follows place.
That.
Okay, so daigaku de, and then the thing being spoken is nihongo.
Oh, the thing being spoken.
Yeah, the thing being spoken is nihongo, and then the particle will be, the particle is o, right? And then to speak is, that's a different, that's more like say. Hanasu is speak, so that conjugates to hanashimasu, right?
Yeah.
So, daigaku de nihongo o hanashimasu. You see how that works? Okay. So, does everybody feel like they have some understanding of how that works? Okay. じゃあ次、we're looking at C. 次のページですね。
I have a quick question about
はい。
2 of our vocabulary words.
はい。
What is the difference between ie and
うち。
uchi?
Uchi does imply a little bit more like home, and it also has a connotation of talking about one's own home rather than someone else's. Ie is a little bit more neutral. It's a little bit closer to house.
Can you use it both in a sentence? Like an English sentence?
Um,
Like which, like,
They're both interchangeable to a degree, but they overlap, and at the same time, there's a little bit of a difference. The key difference between the two is, if you're talking about like somebody you don't know, ie is very neutral. Ouchi can take the honorific o to mean honorable other person's home, versus uchi, which not only means one's own house or household, one's own home. It can be used in place of watashi, or in place of other terms that talk about one's own family, one's own household, one's own home.
So it's kind of like a
if,
placeholder.
It's kind of a placeholder sometimes for personal pronouns. So for example, if you're talking about your own family versus somebody else's family, uchi no kazoku would be like my family. Instead of watashi no kazoku, kazoku means family, but you can say, instead of watashi no kazoku, you could say uchi no kazoku. So uchi has both the meaning of my house, my home, and also the added sort of connotation of me and mine.
almost a warmer feeling?
Yeah.
Because I can be referring to my family, but in a negative way, or people that I don't see very
Right.
often, even though it's still mine.
Right, but it's got a warm tone to it, and it's got a sort of inclusiveness of, this is part of what belongs to me and my family feel to it.
if I said something like, Mary-san wa uchi de ikimasu, would that mean she went to my house? Or uchi ni, sorry, uchi de.
Uchi ni. Okay,
Sorry.
this is a very important distinction. Okay, listen guys, this is very important. So if you're saying that somebody else did it, so we'll use Mary-san wa, right? Uchi ni, and he's asking, if you say uchi instead of ouchi, does that mean that she's coming like to my own house instead of going back to her own
Would
house?
I have to say watashi no?
If you say, Mary-san wa uchi ni himasu, for example, that means Mary comes to my house. Part of the reason you know that is because there's no honorific on the uchi, there's no o there. The other way you know that is because it's not kaerimasu. Because if she's going to her own house, it's going to be kaerimasu, right? Uchi ni kaerimasu would be that Mary's going back to her own house, right? Mary-san wa uchi ni kaerimasu would be Mary returns home. And so then, if you've got kaerimasu here instead, kaerimasu, then what happens is if you leave out the o in ouchi, it implies a degree of closeness with Mary, that she's like a close friend of yours,
Almost family.
or just she's closer to you than you are to the person you're talking to. So like you and Mary are friends, and you're telling an acquaintance that you're not as close with. So you're treating Mary as being almost like family by not using an honorific to talk about her.
I can see some drama going on in like 5th or 6th grade with the way they talk to each other. And like, well, Suzuki was saying it like this.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. So using uchi versus ouchi can make that distinction. Mary-san wa ouchi ni kaerimasu. Mary returns to her honorable house. That's putting a little more distance. I'm being a little bit more polite toward Mary as I tell you about her. So that means that either I consider you a closer friend than Mary, or I consider both of you to be people I'm not that close to, so I need to be honorific. There are all kinds of implications. It gets very detailed. So some of this honorific and non-honorific stuff, don't worry about it too much yet. But as you learn more and more Japanese, it becomes more and more important that you learn these nuances as you go, little by little, as things come up, because native speakers use it and you'll miss stuff. if you're not comprehending those nuances.
Cool.
One of the reasons I picked the 3 titles that I picked, that are the 3 new videos, which are in the Language Lab now, by the way. They're available for watching if you want to. Part of the reason I picked those 3 in particular was because they all include various situations that use different levels of politeness, and they have different circumstances with, like, granddaughter talking to grandmother, and, you know, child of the household talking to client of the household, and peers talking to one another in high school, or peers talking to one another in middle school, older sibling, younger sibling. They have all these different kinds of relationships that have different nuances. So the more you watch those films, the more different levels and details you'll start to perceive.
Okay.
And you'll get more out of it as you go along. A lot of this stuff will go right now because we haven't studied it yet. When you've learned some of that stuff, you'll note, oh, wait a minute, now I understand why she's saying it that way, because of that relationship.
Cool.
Okay? So, what's next?
Ouchi is never for your own house.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, ouchi is always honorific about someone else's house. And notice that there's no honorific form for ie. So that's part of what makes it more neutral as a term.
So
Ie by itself just means a house.
It's more objective.
Yeah, so it's more objective, it's more neutral. It doesn't have all the baggage on it that uchi has. Okay? So, moving on, we're going to start talking about part C. So we're going to contrast, these were the sentences we just finished. We were talking about doing an activity at a place, right? Eating sushi at a restaurant, eating a hamburger at McDonald's, listening to music at home. All of these things were something where you were in the location and doing an activity, right? Now contrast that with what's coming next, which is that we're going to a location. And for now, that's all we're putting in. We're not talking about what you're going to do when you get there. We're just talking about going there, okay? The concept of how to put, like, I'm going to the department store in order to buy shoes, that's a grammar structure that comes way later. That's second semester grammar, okay? So you don't need to worry about that right now. For now, this is going to be a different kind of place sentence. Instead of place de, it's going to be place ni, or place e. One or the other. Please do not use both in the same sentence.
Can you explain the difference between those two?
I will,
please?
okay? Place ni or e, and there are 2 choices here, and then there are 3 choices of verb. Does anybody know which 3 choices work here for verbs?
Kimas, ikimas, and
Kaeri.
And
okay.
kaerimasu.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Okay? So, let's also clarify, so let's first clarify the difference between ni and et, and then let's clarify the difference between when we're going to choose each of those 3 options. Okay? So all of these are with places, right? Et is always going to be a place. Ni could be an event or a place. Okay? So for example, daigaku is a place, right? This campus cannot be picked up and moved, right? So therefore you can say daigaku e kimasu or daigaku ni kimasu. You've got both options, okay? If that's confusing to you and you don't want to use e because you're not clear on the distinction between place and event, that's okay. You can use ni, it works. I just want you to use e, understand e when someone else uses it. The event concept is, for example, let's say there's going to be a particular lecture at the college and you want to attend that lecture. You can say, lecture ni kimasu. You cannot say lecture e kimasu, because the lecture is an event. It's a one-time thing, right? It's not permanently here on the college campus, right? It's a special event, maybe for Women's History Month or some such. And if it was supposed to be held, say, outdoors in the quad, and then it rains, that event can be moved, right? They can say, oh, lecture in the quad canceled, lecture's going to be in building 4, room 205 or something instead, right? They can do that. So that's the difference. An event is something that is planned to be happening in a certain place, but it could be at a different place. You know, Hunter could say, okay, party at his house this weekend, and then, you know, party wa, you know, it could change venue. And Hunter could say, no, I'm not having it at my house, it's going to be at Cody's now, right?
Great friends.
You know, so, you know, or Cody could say, nope, nope, not my house, hold it at the park, I don't want to clean up all that mess. Right? So an event can move, right? So party ni ikimasu. You can go to a party with ni. You would not use e in that sentence because the party is an event that can move. Okay? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So why they have to have both, who knows? But they do. So for now, if you prefer to always just use ni, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The place et stuff, if that's confusing for you, just kind of have it on the back burner. And when you hear it used in context often enough, you'll get comfortable with it. And then it won't matter to you so much whether you're using ni or e, because you'll have a feel for, okay, well, this is definitely a place, so I can use that if I want to. This is definitely an event, so I have to use ni. But that's something that comes with time and practice, right? Okay, now the kimasu, ikimasu, kaerimasu. Okay, here's you. Okay, let's say you are in school. Okay, we're going to pretend this is the school. Okay, and let's say your friend is over here at the park. Okay. Your friend's at the park, right? Park, by the way, I don't know if we've had that vocabulary word yet, have we? Koen? Have we had koen yet? I don't remember. Okay, well, park is koen, just for the sake of this, koen, just for the sake of this exercise. Okay, so we've decided that this is Dr. right? Okay, so let's say your friend calls you up and they want you to come to the park to see them.
Okay.
So they invite you by saying, koen ni kimasu ka? Will you come to the park? They're using kimasu because it's come, right?
Mm-hmm.
You answer, hai ikimasu. Yes, I will go. Because it's not where you currently are. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So you're moving from where you are to someplace else. You use ikimasu to convey the idea of going to that location versus the other person inviting you to where they currently are. They're going to use kimasu to talk about you coming to them. Okay? Now if you've got a third friend who's over here, and he calls you up and says, let's go to the park together. Which verb are you going to use then? He's going to use ikimasu because he's not at the park either. Okay, maybe he's calling from his house, you know, uchi. Okay, so if he's at home and he calls you up at school and says, let's go to the park, both of you would use the verb ikimasu to go to the park.
You're going to somewhere.
You're
asking
going
someone to come to you.
someplace. Right, you're going to someplace other than where you currently are. Now let's say you are still at the school and you're asking your two friends whether or not they're coming to school tomorrow, which verb will you use there? If you're the one asking them, are you gonna come to school tomorrow? I'm at school now. I'm asking, are you gonna come to school tomorrow?
That would be kimas.
Yes, kimasu ka?
Mhm.
And if this guy says, yes, tomorrow I'm going to school, he would use the verb ikimasu. And this guy over here, he would use the verb ikimasu also. Does that help clarify things? Hi.
If the park guy is calling the house guy and asking, are you going to the school tomorrow? It would be ikimasu, because neither of
Yes.
them are at school. You're not saying
Exactly
come, you're
right.
saying go.
Exactly right.
Cool, okay.
Okay?
Is-
So it's all relative to where you currently are when you're asking or answering. Okay? It's not relative to where the other person is when you're speaking. It's relative to where they are when they're speaking. Okay? So if mom is downstairs calling you for dinner and you're upstairs, she says, "Kimasu ka? Are you coming?" And you say, "Hi, ikimasu." Yes, I'm going. You see how that works? Okay, so it's different from the English idiom, but it does have a logic to it, right? And then, of course, if you're asking this friend over here who's at home what he's going to do after school tomorrow, and he says he's going to go home, which verb is he going to use there to talk about going home? Kaerimasu, yes. He's not going to use ikimasu. In English, we say we're going to go home, right? But in Japanese, it's always kaerimasu for returning home. Make sense? Now, if you're the one going to your friend's house, you would use ikimasu to talk about coming, going to visit his house, right? You're at college and he invites you to his house. He says, "Kimasu ka? Are you going to come to my house?" And you can say, "Hi, ikimasu." Yes, I'll go to your house. You wouldn't use kaerimasu unless you're living with him.
Because you don't want to return to your house. Doesn't make any sense.
Right, it doesn't make any sense unless you live there too. And if you're his roommate, that's a different story. Hi.
Now, I know the verbs that we're using are considered present affirmatives, right?
Yes.
Even though we're speaking of the future. Is that because we're trying to keep it simple, or is that just what we're doing
There
now?
is not a separate future tense in Japanese.
That's all good news.
Yeah. So Japanese has this one tense, what they call the mas form. Masu is both present positive for habits. It's the equivalent of what English calls the simple present tense, like I go. When you talk about I go, I come, I return, that's habit stuff, right? Like I go to school every day. That's habit, right? Mas forms do that. The other piece that these exact same verbs do is future. So, like, tomorrow I will go in English, right? You can't say tomorrow I go. That's incorrect English, right? But in Japanese, ashita ikimasu. There's no difference between ashita ikimasu, I'll go tomorrow, and mainichi ikimasu, I go every day. The only difference in Japanese is between using a future tense time word like ashita versus a daily kind of time word, a frequency word such as mainichi.
And then obviously the particle will change.
Right. Well, no, the particle will change for other things, not for tense. So if you're saying uchi ni kaerimasu, without a time word on that, that could be I return home frequently, or it could be I will return home. There's no telling. Uchi ni kaerimasu is just uchi ni kaerimasu. It's either I will return home or I do return home. It's one or the other, but there's no telling until you put a time word on it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so Japanese just doesn't make that distinction. Okay? Now what they do distinguish between is positive and negative.
Right.
So you can do kimasen for will not come, so your friend, and does it talk about kimasen ka in this chapter, or is that a next chapter? Kimasen ka, yes, it's this chapter, so let me talk about that as long as we're on the subject. So all of these, kimasu ka is like, will you come? Ikimasu ka, will you go? Kaerimasu ka, will you return home? If you change it to masen, masen endings make it negative. So you can answer ie and kimasen, no, I'm not coming. Ie ikimasen, no, I'm not going. Ie kaerimasen, no, I'm not returning, right? If you take that masen form and add a ka to it, that turns it into a polite invitation, kind of like, won't you please, in English. Won't you please come to my party? Party ni kimasen ka?
Then how do I say, please don't go to the park?
That's a completely different structure that we're not studying
Okay.
yet.
Because that's what I thought that would be.
No, but that's a good guess. But no,
change the lines.
doesn't work that way.
You almost, by making it negative and turning it into a question, the invitation is almost inferred, and they're just given the
Yeah.
option for their own benefit to
Yeah.
decline the invitation.
Yeah, it's more like that. There's no please inherent in this structure. Masenka isn't really won't you please, that's just the polite equivalent in English, right? So it's that level of politeness, it's equivalent to won't you please do this, okay? So in terms of politeness level, it's equivalent to that English phrase, but in terms of structure, it's more like asking the question in the negative so that if the person wants to turn you down, they can basically say, yes, I won't. Okay? Which is a contradiction that doesn't work in English. But Japanese people like that structure because they'd rather say yes than no. Okay? It's a cultural thing that saying no or being negative is frowned upon. It's always better to be agreeable and harmonize with the group. So by asking the question in the negative, you're giving the person who's going to answer two positive options. They can say, yes, I won't, or yes, I will. Either way, they get to say yes. It makes them much more comfortable. Okay? So you're being kind to this person that you maybe don't know all that well by giving them an easy out. You're letting them say yes either way. Whether it's yes, I can't make it, or whether it's yes, I'd love to come. Either way, they get to say yes. Oh, I feel so much better. I get to save face. You know? I don't have to be the rude one by saying no.
So if I really want the Japanese person to do something, I just don't phrase it that way, and they're more likely to just say yes.
That is a subtle way of guilt tripping somebody into doing something in Japanese culture, yes. Yeah, if you ask somebody, kimasu yo ne? You're coming, right? It's very hard for them to say no. Yeah, so if you really, really, really want this person to come to your party and you're afraid that they're not going to, and you don't mind
Just tell them
being
to
a
do
little
something
bit
else.
annoyingly, pushy about it, kimasu yo ne? You're coming, right? Is like a subtle way of not letting them have an easy way out. They can still manage to find a way around that if they're really desperate enough. But it makes it a little bit more challenging for them to say no.
Now, could you say ikimasen ne for the opposite? Like, it makes it really easy to say yes. Like, you're not coming, right?
Yeah, that could sound like you don't want them to come.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, like if it's somebody you don't like and you're hoping they're not going to show up for your party, kimasen ne? You're not coming, right? It's like, hint, hint, I really don't like you that much, don't come. that can come across as really rude, so be careful.
Or you're very much
At least I'm
others.
acknowledging them in the conversation. You know, at least I know the party that I'm going
Okay,
to.
but do you get how the grammar works, though?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, I do.
so, but yeah, if you're trying to give somebody an easy out, that you're pretty sure they don't want to go to that thing, ikimasen, you're not going, right? You know, if you're pretty sure they don't want to, then you can use that as a way of giving them an easy out. Yeah. So, but does everybody feel comfortable with the differentiation between kimasu, ikimasu, kaerimasu? Those three
Based off of
situations.
where the speaker is.
Right, where
Yes.
the speaker is. So, you know, when you've got different locations to work with, you can kind of play around with that concept easier. That's why I do my silly little stick diagrams.
I can do that.
Oh, thank you.
I like it.
Arigato. Okay, so using that concept, if you look at the pictures in part C, you can see that they're giving you a perspective to work from. So, you know, Mary is going to the post office. Mary is going to the library, but then they put school in the foreground, or Mary is coming to school. See the difference? They put the school in the foreground so that you're kind of sitting in the school perspective, and she's coming to where you are. Does that make sense? That whole, you know, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to illustrate this concept. And then, you know, coming to the coffee shop, you're already at the kisaten, and you're waiting for her to come meet you there. You know, and then returning home, again, you're outside perspective, right? And then returning to the US from Japan, perhaps, right? Because remember I said that kaerimasu works for any time that you are outside of a place that you would call home and you're returning to that location. And that could be as broad as your own country or as narrow as your own bedroom. Okay? And actually it could even be the planet Earth if you're an astronaut and you're on Mars or something. Then you could say chikyū ni kaerimasu. Yes. Returning to the Earth. You know, and you know, if you were an alien going to a different galaxy or something, yeah, returning to that galaxy, that you would use kaerimasu. Yes.
So in this exercise, we're basically telling Mary what to do.
Basically, you're describing what she does. You know, we're assuming that either we're talking about her habits, that she does these things frequently, or we're talking about later today, these are the things she's going to do.
Right.
Okay? So we're assuming that we're either talking about habit or future. We're not doing past, that's next chapter,
Not worried about it.
okay? And we're not putting time on it yet. We're going to come back to that after we talk about just travel to and from destinations. So we'll come back for time in a little while. Okay? Hopefully we'll get to that later in the class today. Okay, so I think it's Julie's turn. Dozo. はい、図書館に行きます。We're going to the library. I guess we skipped the example. 郵便局に行きます。But that's okay. Okay, Miriam's just observing today, or are you participating? Okay, じゃあ、エリさん、2番。
Jack, I was getting ready for the library one.
Oh, so come to school would be 学校. 学校 is school. 学校,
学校で
not dead.
え
We just
Me.
talked ni. There you go. 学校に
行きます。
No, because she's coming to school. So 学校に
I'm gonna need some a little help here.
this one here.
Oh, 来ます。 kimasu.
Yes, kimasu. Gakko ni kimasu. Okay, because she's coming to school. We're already at school and she's coming to where we are. Okay, that's how that works. じゃあ、マイケルさん、3番。
喫茶店に来ます。
はい、喫茶店に来ます。はい、
あ
4番。
お家に帰ります。
はい、お家に帰ります。5番、ジェイクさん。
アメリカに帰ります。
はい、そうですね。Okay. Any questions so far? Okay.
Yes.
Hi.
What's the difference between de and ni?
Okay, so the de need difference. When you're using it with place, both of these can be used with places, right? Right? Ni, place ni, one of these three verbs.
Okay.
No other options.
Okay.
Later, there'll be one or two other verbs added, but way later. Like green book later, so don't worry about it. Okay?
De is I'm doing something after
De,
this.
Okay.
place de, action verb.
Oh, then ni is just like going somewhere. More or less.
Yeah, ni is destination,
Okay.
going to a place.
Okay.
De is doing something at a place. So if you translate de as sort of like at
Mm.
a place, and ni as to,
Okay.
come to school, go to school, return to your house. Now, obviously in English, we don't normally say return to home, you just say return home. But how many people have heard a Japanese person make that mistake and say return to home? I have, zillions of times. Because that's a common mistake they make, because in Japanese, they need the particle ni. So, and they think that ni is the same thing as to, because that's what their English grammar book told them. So that's why they use it every time, even when it's not really needed in the English idiom. Right.
With ni, it seems like the place is it's more reflective of the verb itself, whereas in de, the place is more of just a,
Location.
it's just more of a location, but like when I say I'm reading at school, I'm not reading the school, that's just
Reading
where I'm
at
reading.
the school, yeah, so
Whereas,
it really is at versus to.
yeah,
I'm going to the school, and then after I get there, I'm reading at the school, right? Gakko ni ikimasu, and then gakko de hon o yomimasu. Two entirely different actions. One is a traveling action, right? And the other is an action where you're quite possibly sitting still or doing something within a single room or a single location, right? So these verbs are sometimes referred to as destination verbs as opposed to action verbs. You know, you got to make a distinction somehow, because English doesn't make this kind of distinction in this way, right? We don't need like a different grammar particle for going to a place versus eating dinner at a place, right? We don't use grammar particles. We use prepositions instead, which sometimes overlap with grammar particles in their usage and meaning, but not 100%. So that's why I consider it only a tool to say that this sort of means something like at, and this sort of means something like to, but don't get too tied to those definitions, because we're about to give you another meaning for ni. Okay?
What, number 4 or 5?
Like I said last class, Japanese has lots of knees. Okay? Okay, so let's look at part D. So let's just try making a few questions and answering them using either a destination verb or an action verb. You can take your pick. Okay, so I'm going to let Jake and Hunter read the example, and then everybody's going to we'll go around the room once and let everybody pick whether they want to ask a question with me or a question with Dad. Okay?
図書館で雑誌を読みますか？
いいえ、読みません。
Hi, that works.
You
Okay.
can read or you can't read?
Both?
No, this is do you, not can you. There's actually a different conjugation
So if I want to
to
imply
imply
he's illiterate.
ability. Then you have to get yourself to the green book, because that's where they teach
All right.
ability
I'll table that
conjugations.
for now.
Noneですか?
Okay, so yeah, we're not gonna get into ability conjugations anytime soon. So, Hunta-san, you get to make up a question to challenge Bradley.
Alright. Fantastic. Alright, how about, uchi ni karimasu?
Kaerimasu ka?
Sorry, karimasu ka?
Hi, that was easy. Okay, now you get to make up a
Come
question.
back home with me.
No, that would be you.
Return
Who
home.
wants to go to-
No, you asked him if he was gonna go home.
Yeah, if he's going to.
Trying to be funny and ask me who's gonna return home.
With
Like
you.
to me.
Oh.
I'm calling it, like we're married, never mind, keep moving. The joke didn't land, guys.
Yeah. Nice try though.
Either way, you like me. Garko de. Ongaku de masu ka?
Ongaku o
Ongaku o
kiki.
kikimasu.
There you go.
Yeah, I had something.
Yeah. Okay, so 学校で音楽を聴きますか?
はい。聞きます。
はい。いいですね. So notice that you can just do はい、聞きます or いいえ、聞きません. You don't have to repeat back the whole question. Okay? Fisher-san, you're asking Lindsay whatever question you want to ask.
Alright. Kisaten de tabimasu ka?
You eat at a coffee shop. はい、食べます. That works. はい、どうぞ. You can ask Julie something. Keep it simple then. It's okay.
About 大学に来ませんですか?
来ませんか? 来ませんか? Won't you please come to the college? 行きません. Okay. Yeah, since it's a different perspective, you know, this is assuming that she's at college and you're not at the college when she's asking you this. So, はい、行きません would be, no, I'm not, you're right, I'm not going. That hi there is kind of like you're right. I'm agreeing with you that I'm not going. Okay, does that make sense? Now, if you are both at college at the time and she's asking you like about a future event or something, that maybe something's going on tomorrow that she wants to know if you're coming for or not, you know, then it would be like, 明日大学に来ませんか? And then if you're not coming, you would say, はい、来ません. Yes, I'm not coming tomorrow. Okay, make sense? Okay, I'm gonna let you ask Michael something. Okay. Does he live in the post office?
I thought he lived there and he's going back.
It doesn't work that way.
No?
Kayarimasu only works for going home to a place you belong. Modorimasu is the verb for returning to some place you visited before.
What if he lives there?
It's still not kayarimasu because he doesn't live there.
They seem like, it feels like he lives there. They're-
Maybe.
Hey,
Yeah.
things to ship, okay? Yeah, like your turn, like everybody else, come on.
But yeah, kayarimasu doesn't work for Yubin Kyoku because it's not a home. Okay.
3 months upstairs. Ikimasu.
Okay. Ikimasu ka? Yubin Kyoku ni ikimasu ka?
Hai kimasu.
Hai, ikimasu. Because you're not there right now, right?
Follow-up question is what, you know something for you too? Or why ask?
Well, we'll worry about that some other time. Maiko-san, you get to ask Cody-san.
Kiseten ni kimasu ka?
Yeah, ikimasen.
Right, that works. Okay, now you get to ask Jake.
Ouchi de niku o tabemasu ka?
Good one.
Hey, son. Hi, 食べます。
Right, good one. All right. Okay, one last one, because you didn't get to create one before, you only got to
Right.
read one that already existed.
Trying to make jokes, they don't land, Jake. Alright.
Gakko de nemasu ka?
You ask what I think you're asking? I don't know.
What do you think he's asking?
Hi.
Okay.
That one landed.
Yeah, that worked.
It's so cool.
Okay, so does everybody get how the two structures
Demo.
work and how to differentiate between them? Did that help to clarify the two different kinds of points?
Yes.
Okay, so moving on, we get to start talking about time, which also takes ni, okay? Except when it doesn't.
So will we
So-
should we use me twice in the sentence then?
You can use ni twice in the sentence when it's serving two different functions.
If I drop a third in there.
Okay, so,
Well, they already have to do like me, homo and stuff.
Yeah, so if you're saying maybe I'm going to 2 Japanese classes at 2 o'clock.
Oh, it's a lot of these.
A lot of these.
yeah. And then there are crazy ones like, there's a very silly little, I guess you could call it a tongue twister in Japanese that is, in the garden, there are 2 chickens. Niwa niwa, niwa niwa tori ga imasu. And that makes use of 2, with the measure word.
Let's map it out. Why not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, niwa, ni, wa, niwa, niwatori ga imasu. Okay,
So this is
so
like how much wood can a woodchuck chuck and a woodchuck cook?
pretty much. Yeah, so
Yeah.
garden in topic marker.
That Chinese poem that was all sheep.
Oh, 40子. Yeah, that one. Yeah, that's 44 Stone Lions. Yeah, that's classic.
Wait, what's it called?
44 Stone Lions, 40子.
That's an amazing band name.
Oh,
Right?
Let's stick to one language at a time, shall we?
I agree.
So, niwa niwa. Niwa is literally two, and then this is the measure word for birds. And then niwa kori is literally garden bird, which means chicken. Yeah, it really is. Yard bird, garden bird. Niwa is like a yard or a garden.
It's also a sandwich.
And then this ga imas is to exist.
Better than stuck in a tiny cage bird.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can tell they were named a long time ago,
Garden
right?
bird, you're in the garden.
Wait.
So, niwa niwa, niwa tori ga niwa niwa, niwa tori ga imasu.
You're gonna tell me this.
Yeah, so, but the real point here is that you can use, for example, you remember Niji, to keep the theme of the crazy puns going.
Sure.
Remember, Niji is
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Uh-huh.
Niji ni, let's say, gakko ni kimasu would be, I'll come to school at 2 o'clock. Okay, now you see one of the reasons we will always have kanji in Japanese. Because without this kanji, this sentence gets more confusing, right? Okay, and don't forget that this and this will eventually be kanji as well. We're just not learning those kanji yet.
So for the homework, should we write the kanji or the hiragana?
For the numbers and the times, go ahead and write the kanji. Okay? If it's something that's not a kanji that's required in this chapter, if it's not one of the numbers, a time or a price, don't mess with the kanji unless you
Unless
just
it's in-
really have been already learning kanji before now and you want to keep working on your kanji. But if you're just doing this chapter as it's meant to be done, the only kanji I'm expecting you to actually use in context for this chapter and this chapter test when it comes will be straight numbers, numbers as part of time phrases, and numbers as part of prices. Okay, those are the kanji I'm expecting to get used in this chapter. So if you're,
So we
if
need to
you've
know
got
that time
something
code.
that is like 500 yen,
Okay,
write it like this.
okay.
If the time you're going someplace is kuji han, you would write the kuji, and then
So,
han would be in hiragana for now because that's next chapter's kanji. So you don't have to know the han
kanji for
yet.
the numbers and the time and the end would be, yeah, right up the kanji for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and if you're doing like a phone number, now instead of spelling it out, san, ni, ichi, no, you can do san, ni, ichi, no, and then, you know, instead of writing it out in hiragana, which takes twice as long, right? So, you know, if you've got, you know, 3, 2, 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 4, 3 or something, you know, 3, 2, 1の5、6、7の8、9 or I don't remember what number I said. 8、9、4、3 or whatever made up phone number I came up with just now. So do you see how you can write your kanji phone number now, right? You don't have to spell it out. So that's part of what kanji does. And it also helps to give context to a sentence like this where ni, and ni all exist. But it also helps to know that, like I said, ni has two functions, right? You've got ni marking time, and you've got ni marking traveling to a destination, right? Okay, now I said a minute ago that ni marks time except for when it doesn't, right? So there are three basic categories of time phrases that don't take ni, and a specific definition of when it does take ni. The general terminology is specific time versus relative time. Okay, and this is not, okay, add me with specific time. This is not Einstein's theory of relativity, okay? This is, if you've got a clock time, add me. Okay, if you've got a date, add me. If you've got a day of the week, add me.
Oh, and relative
Okay.
time would be in an hour? Or something like that? Next
Okay.
week, something like that?
About to get to it.
Yeah, we're actually not even getting to like an hour from now kinds of
Oh.
phrases in this chapter. Itsu is when, no ni. Frequency adverbs such as
Always and never.
mainichi, itsumo, which is always, taite. Okay, so these are all what would be called frequency adverbs. Okay, frequency adverbs as a class do not take ni ever. Okay, the question word itsu does not take ni. And then relative phrases such as tomorrow, yesterday, etc. These are relative in the sense that if I say tomorrow right now, I mean Wednesday, right? But if I said tomorrow on Monday, I would have meant today, Tuesday, right? So it's relative in the sense that depending on when you say it, the meaning of what day you're actually pointing at changes, right?
Relative.
So that's relative, exactly. So words like tomorrow and yesterday, etc., are relative time. Frequency adverbs are also relative in a sense, but it's also a frequency thing. And then itsu is just a question word, and it just doesn't take ni just because.
Okay.
Okay, so those three categories, itsu, frequency adverbs, and relative time phrases, do not take ni. Okay? Specific times that you can read on a clock, put on a calendar as a date or a day of the week, those take ni. So, for example, nichiyobi is one of your vocab words, right? Nichiyobi ni gakko ni kimasen, right? On Sundays, I do not come to school. Make sense? Right? Or, doyobi ni tennis o shimasu ka? On Saturdays, do you play tennis?
That time of Saturday isn't going to change.
Right.
No matter who you're talking to, everybody,
Right.
it means it's the same definition. to
Saturday
everybody.
means Saturday, so if you're trying to find out whether or not your friend plays tennis on Saturdays, then you would say doyobi ni tennis o shimasu ka, right? Because you're asking about a habitual action that they may or may not do on Saturdays.
And even to say like I usually play tennis or something,
Right.
that's going to be relative. Usually might be more or less to somebody
Right.
else.
Right, and if you,
Specific amount.
if you want to combine both of these into one sentence, if you wanted to say, I usually play tennis on Saturdays, 日 or 土曜日に大抵テニスをします. So you can put both phrases in there, but only the specific one takes the ni. And it doesn't matter which order you put them in, that's still going to be the case. So 大抵土曜日にテニスをします would be like, usually on Saturdays I play tennis.
The particle moves with the.
Right, the particle moves with the nichiyobi or the doyobi or whatever other phrase.
Awesome.
Okay? Making sense? We haven't really learned how to talk about dates yet, but that's another example. You know, if you wanted to say May 31st is the date on which you're going to do something or other, you could say that with ni. Okay? If you're talking about a clock time, 2時にクラスに行きます. At 2 o'clock, I will go to class. Or 5時に家に帰ります. At 5 o'clock, I will return home. Make sense? So those are the kinds of phrases that take ni. And if there's one that's ambiguous, there are actually some that fall sort of in the middle ground where some people choose to put a ni there, some people choose not to, and you can make a case for either one. The main example of that is clock time plus goro. Goro is that approximate suffix, so you can say 2時頃帰ります. I'll return around 2 o'clock. Or 2時頃に帰ります. I'll return at around 2 o'clock.
Cool.
So just like in English, you can kind of get away with putting that at in the sentence or leaving it out of the sentence. And different grammarians might have different arguments for why you should do it one way or the other. The same thing is true of Japanese, that when it's a clock time that's approximate, you can argue that, well, it's still clock time, put ni. Or, but it's approximate, so that's not exact, so you don't have to put ni. Both arguments hold water. I've never heard anyone authoritatively say one is correct and the other is wrong. It's always, well, you can go either way. So they'll even, in this book, I think they put it in parentheses in that circumstance where it's after goro. They actually put the ni in parentheses in your textbook so that you know that you could put it with or leave it out. Either way, it's okay, but only because it's one of those ambiguous ones. Same thing for certain terms like 毎週末 every weekend or 毎週 every week. Most people class those as frequency adverbs, but some people want to put a ni in there, and you know, it's kind of iffy. Okay, I don't know how much time we have left.
We are out of time.
We are out of time. じゃあ終わりましょう。